Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 6 of our front-end course. And today we'll be looking at tables and CSS combinators. Now, in the class lesson, we have looked at these topics and we've seen how to create tables, and we've also seen how to use combinators. Now, what we're going to do here is to illustrate how to make use of these topics to create something on the web page. All right, now we're going to start with the table, and then we're going to look at how to use different combinators to style the table. I'll begin with a heading, and this will be everything we're going to look at today, which will be tables and combinators. So this. Now, we've learned that to create a table on the web page or on our HTML documents, we use the elements for the table. And we're going to start with that. We're going to create a table, elements. And here we want to design a table. This is going to be a simple table, not complex. And after this, we're going to look at a complex table. Now, this table would hold the combinators, informations about combinators, and illustrates how they work inside this table. So it's going to be a creative illustration. So please, wherever you feel lost and you need to ask a question, feel free to ask a question so we don't get too lost in the process. All right, now we are going to create a simple table just to refresh our memory on tables. And for this table, we'll be having the T head, the T body, while the complex table, we would not be using any of the T head or T body elements and go straight to the TR. So let's look at this. So first, I want to make sure that this table has a core group style and a caption. So I will use the caption elements to give the table a caption. And I want this table to be it's about combinators. And we are going to have a core group. We want to add colors to the background of this table. So I'm going to include a core group. And in between the stats and the end tag of the core group is where we're going to include the style. Now for the first columns, the core group basically is just a short or an way of styling the table or including some extra contents or modifications to the table. So we're going to use the core group to add a color. Now on the first core group, we are going to include a specific color using the code elements. Now I wouldn't add the colors yet, but I'm just going to add this table, and we'll come back to this part table. And then we can start creating our table. So if I save this and I refresh the page, we are not going to have the table, but just the caption of the table, which is combinators. Now let's create the table so we can see a better illustration of this. All right, now first we're going to start with the T head. where we're going to have all the headings for this table. Now, the T-head elements is one of the best way to, or one of the simple way to structure a table. Now, this is just to make sure that all headings are in these parts of the elements of our table. So the T-head elements basically holds the heading of any table. So here we are going to make use of the TH elements, which are the cells for headings. So the TH would give us the cell, but before that, we're going to use the T arrow, which signifies that we are going to have a row. For rows of a table. You know, tables are made of columns and rows. So we're going to look at this more as we use more examples. So we're going to start with the T arrow, and this signifies that we're going to have a row, and this row, we want to have the headings for this table. That's why we have created the T-head elements, so we can include a row of headings for these parts of the table. So the first row of this table would have the headings using the TH elements, and in between the elements is where we give the names for our headings. So the first heading here would be for element selectors. And in this table, we are still going to look at how they are applied. So the next heading on this same row would be for how the style is applied. So we're going to name this style applied. And the last column on this row would hold the heading for examples. All right, now we have our first row. So if I save this and refresh, you are going to see that we have 3 headings, which is the element selectors, the style applied, and example. Now, there are no borders yet because we have not applied the CSS style into this to give us the borders. But you can see that they are displayed in bold, telling us that it's a heading. All right, so let's create a style for this table. So as we go, it's going to make more sense. So before we create more cells, let's create a general style for the table. Okay, I'm going to illustrate this after. All right, so the first thing we want to do is we want to, let's take the text, the heading to the center using the text align. And now let's focus on the table. So we want to make sure that the table has border, and we want to specify a width for the table. So first, I want to create the border for each cell. So using the TD and TH, so I'll say TH and TD. I want to include borders, and just like we've always added borders to our elements, we use the border elements and we specify the size of the border, which is 2px, and it's going to be solid, and the color is red. So first of all, this to make sure that the TH and TD elements we're going to be using, we have not created a TD element yet because we just created the T head. And once we create the T body, we're going to have TD elements. But here I have included the style to make sure that there are borders around it. So when we look at the examples and how we apply the selectors, it's going to be more, it's going to make more sense. All right, so now we've created the borders for each cell, the TD and TH, but to make sure that it displays well like a table, we are going to collapse the borders, and we do this on the table element, which holds all borders. Because the table element holds the TD and TH, which holds all borders, we are going to apply the border collapse to the table elements. Now we use the border collapse. And we specify in the value we want to collapse the borders. So once we do this, the borders are joined together, allowing us to have a proper table. Now we are going to also increase the width of the table and set the height of the table as well. So the height of the whole table will be auto, depending on the amount of content. So it's going to adjust according to the amount of content or the screen size. And the width, we are going to give the width to be, let's use 60% of the screen. So if I save this and refresh, we see that the width is extended of 60% of the size of the screen. That this part of the browser has been reduced already. So it takes 60% of the space that we have for the screen that displays the browser. If I also increase the size of the screen, it's going to as well take 60% of it as well. All right, so we'll keep this for easy visualization. All right, next, I want to make sure that the table is centered. So I'm going to set the margin to auto. And if I save this, we are going to have the table at the center of the page. All right, now this is enough for the tables. So we can go ahead to create the table. Now, we want to have the cells that will display these, the contents or the data for these headings. So we created the first row using the TR elements, which displays the TH headings. Now let's create another row, but we're going to do this in the simple structure we've created in the T body. And we'll specify that we want to have another row using the TR tag. And now here we're going to be using TDs to display the data or the content for the headings. Now we can have other elements inside the tables, inside the TD or TH tags. We can have other elements like lists, paragraphs, and any of the text or any of the elements that can display content as well inside the table. So we can display other type of elements in the tables, not just text like this. So we're going to use that to illustrate the difference. So here on this first row, on this first column, this is where we've created the second row. And if I save this and refresh, once I create the cells, we are going to see that we've created a second row. So now, first thing we want to look at is the first type of selector, and I would explain all the selectors once we are done. So I'm just going to type this first using the TD. And here we're going to look at this selector, a div, and a p element. I'll save this. And the style we want to apply will be a color. So I'm going to use another TD, and I'm going to apply a color here. And the color will be blue. And on the next cell, we are going to have, on the next cell, we're going to have another TD. And this TD is going to be the example. So I'm just going to type paragraph, because that will be the name of the elements we're going to use. So it's going to make more sense once we are done. And I'll put this in a p tag, since this is a paragraph. So I just added this in a p tag. And I'm also going to make sure that it's in a div, so we see how the type of selector works. So this is going to be a descendant selector, but I'm going to explain how it works. So I'll put a div first. I'm going to copy this out. So I'm going to add a div first. And I don't want a class for this div. And in this div, I want to add the paragraph. So you can see that inside the TD elements, I have a div and I have a paragraph that displays the word paragraph. So I'm going to save this and refresh the page. Now, without the styling, we just have the words, which is div, paragraph, elements, and for element selector, and for the style we want to apply, is going to be a blue color, and we expect the paragraph to display a blue color. Once we've used the element selector, the combinator of the element selector to select the paragraph inside this div container to display as a blue text. So I'm just going to quickly do this for other example we're going to be having. All will be inside the TD T-body elements. So I'll save this. I'm just going to copy this and edit the content. For the second one, we're going to have lists. So it will be a UL. All right. And the style we're going to apply will be a list style. And in the example area, we're going to have the example of a list. So here we're going to actually use a list, and we're going to use the UL tag for the list. And we're going to have list item inside the UL tag. So I'm going to delete this space. I'm just going to write different items. Let's look at let's give them names. Let's say square. I'm going to use a list type of square. Square list item. All right, so now I'm just arranging this so it makes sense to us. Now you can see that on the first TD, we have the element selector we want to illustrate, and then the style we're going to apply will be a list style type. And next, we want to illustrate how this default marker, which is the style type, would be displaying a square list item using the element selector to add a style to this. So it looks complex now, but because we've not used the element selector, and this is one of the creative way we can use to illustrate these selectors to see how they can be used anywhere on the web page. So I'm just going to copy this again for another row. Going to edit it. Here would be just for a H2 plus a P paragraph. I'm going to explain these selectors so we see how they work. And the style we're going to apply will be a font weight. Inside here, I'm going to have a paragraph and the heading. So I'm going to use a H2 and I'll call this heading. And call this a paragraph. So I'll save this. And for our last selector, for our last selector, we want to look at a H3. The tilde sign and paragraph. Style we're going to apply will be a font style of italic. Going to have a H3 and a paragraph of italic. So I'll just save this to H3. In this paragraph, will be italic. All right, now I think this is I'm going to save this, refresh the page, and now we have the contents that we've added to the table. So once we look at this table again, we're going to see that every element we've learned so far has been used. Not all, but most of the elements, most of the elements we've learned so far has been used inside this table. Now on the heading for the T head, we have the heading using the TH elements to give this text as the heading, element selectors, style applied, and example. And below them are the contents that we want to illustrate. So we are looking at two things here. We're looking at creating a table, and we're also looking at combinators. So now let's apply the styles to these combinators using the element selectors. Let's apply a style to these contents using the element selectors from the style sheet. So the first one we want to look at here, we're looking at the descendants combinator. So this first one on the row, on this row, is called the descendant combinator. So I'm going to show you how we write the descendant combinator, and it's written as the name of the element, which is a div. So recall that what we have inside the, so I'm going to write this completely first. So before we apply the style, let's look at how this is written inside. So on the first row, we have in the T head, we have the heading, and in the T body, we have the first row inside the T body, which is div P. So now this is how this descendant selector is written, and the color we want to use to illustrate this is, the style we want to use to illustrate this is adding a color of blue to the P tag. Now see how the P tag is inside the div, and we want to make sure that this div, we use this div to apply a style to the paragraph that's inside the div. So to also put this in plain explanation, it's like a descendant of a particular lineage, right? So it's what's inside, it's giving birth inside is known as the descendant. So we have this P element inside this div, which makes it a descendant to this div. So when we select the div like this with the P element next to it, we are trying to say that we want to apply any style we give here to the P elements. Now, if we have other P elements inside the div, we're also going to have this same style applied to the P elements as well. So it's going to select all P elements that are descendants of the div elements. So let's add the style. And here we say we want to give a color. So I'm going to say color. And I want the color to be blue. So I'm going to save this. And we have the paragraph displayed as blue. So if we have more P elements or more paragraphs using the P tag inside this div, so let's say we want another P element, and I'll call this second paragraph. Save this, and it still gives us a blue color. But if we have something else other than the P elements inside this div and with content, it's not going to also affect that because we did not specify the elements here. What we specify is the P elements. All right, so let's look at the second element selector, which is called the child combinator. So this is known as the child selector or the child combinator. Now the selector, the child combinator selects all lists inside. It's going to select all lists inside the UL elements. That's the list li tag that are inside the UL elements. And we're going to set the style for these items. So just like the descendant selector, we're going to add the style here. And it's written as UL with a greater than sign and the list elements that we want to apply this style to. So now the list style type here is what we want to change. We want to change from the default, which is a disk. We want to change to a square. So I'm going to type the square here and save. Now we see that the square now is the marker for the list. So recall that we had the UL tag inside this TD cell, and we also have the list tag or the list items inside the UL tag. Now we apply the style to the list item. We could have a paragraph inside this UL tag, but it's not going to take any effect on the paragraph because we did not specify the paragraph. We just specified that we want the UL and every child inside the every child as a list item or the li tag inside the UL as parents. So the li is a child, the UL is a parent. As well, we can as well look at it as the TD is a parent and the UL is a child, but the li is not a direct child to the TD. All right. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask as we progress. Now, the next example here is known as the adjacent symbol combinator. And what we had here is the adjacent symbol combinator selects the P element that immediately follows the H2 element. So it makes the text in the paragraph. It's going to make the text in the paragraph bold. That's what we're going to do. We're going to add the font weight style to this selector. So let's do that here. So we had H2 using the plus sign to signify that we want to do an adjacent selecting, and we're selecting the paragraph, and we want the font weight to be bold. I'm going to save this, and now we have the paragraph displayed as bold. So we look at it again. How did we do this? We have the H2 and we also have the paragraph. Now the H2 is the paragraph is not inside the H2, so we call it adjacent because it takes the next tag. Now this tag may be below the H2 or in front of the H2, but as long as it does not come before the H2 on the document, it's an adjacent. It's going to select it as an adjacent element. So if we have another element inside this same space, it's going to also select it. Now, the reason why it's not selecting this TD because this is a closed tag and it's not opened here. So they are currently in the TD element. Now, if we had another element here and before this closed element, it's also going to select it and apply the style to it as well. So it selects every element within an element. So it selects every element below the elements that is selected, and all elements, it ends at the end of the next element, like we have here. So we have this as the ending of this whole syntax, and it doesn't select anything else past this close tag. So if we keep on having tags here, it's going to select it and apply the style we specify to it. So there are different styles you can use to create something like this. All right, now we're going to look at the last one, which is the general sibling selector or the general sibling combinator. I'm going to write the style here. And we're using the H3, which we created, and a tilde sign in the paragraph. And we are changing the font style to italic. I'll save this, and we're going to have the paragraph written as italic. So now let's look at how we cell, the last cell there. We have a heading. We have a H3 heading, and next to it we have a paragraph that says this paragraph is italic. So we expected that we are going to add a style of italic to this paragraph. So that's why we wrote this as this paragraph is italic. So the element is next to the H3. Now we selected it using the general sibling selector because this selector specifies that every element that is a P element below or after the H3 is a general sibling to this element. So we're looking at this now as a sibling selector. So this is a let's say this is a male and this is female. So they are siblings of the TD elements. So we can look at it this way and say that these are brothers and sisters, and we applied a style specifying that if we have more siblings that are P elements, right? And we have said that we've selected all siblings that are P elements to have this style. So this is how the general sibling selector works. It's going to take every P element that are siblings to this H3. So remember, it has to be after the H3 or below the H3, depending on where you have it on your HTML document. So these are the selectors we have on HTML, and we're also going to see other ways to select elements when we look at there are other ways, there are other creative ways, the end child, but you can research that when you have the time. All right, now let's add a style. Initially, we had the co-span that we were going to include colors to make this table look more to look nice. So I'm going to use this span, and I want the first column. So I'm going to specify 1 here, and then I'm going to include the style using an inline style. So I'm going to say style, and I want the background color to have I'm going to select a color. So let's look at how to select the colors using Google libraries or libraries from Google. So I want to look for text color library. So I'm just going to do this quick so we can explore this ourselves. So there are several ways we can select colors, and on this htmlcolorcodes.com, you're going to find different colors to select from. Okay, while it's taking time to load, I'm going to give the color I have, which is BAF786. So I'm just going to copy this and I'll paste this here. I want this to have the rest 2 columns, and I want to give it a different color. And this would be 3. So I'll save this, refresh, and we have the colors as specified. We want the first column to have the span. We want the colors, the background color to span on the first column, and the other 2 columns, we want it's the color to span 2 columns. So that's what this signifies. All right, now we have looked at how to create a simple table, and we have seen how to style or select elements using the different element selectors. Now let's quickly look at a complex table. So let's say we have a table that isn't as simple as this, and we want to understand how to create a creative table that doesn't specify a T body or a T head. So I'm also going to do this in a table element. And now we're going to look at, so first let's add a space. I'm going to use a div for this. I just want to use this to create a space. This isn't part of the table. I want to reuse this to have an inline style of margin. Of 50 px. I just want a space below this for the next table. All right, now on this table, we just want to look at how to create a complex table using co-span and row span. Now, let's look at tables like this. We noticed that when we created this table, the first table, we had rows to specify the rows, and we had TD or TH to specify if the cell would be a heading or a body. Now, that's what we need to, that's all we need to create a table, basically. We could structure it in a T head or T body, but that was going to limit us to be able to create a complex table. So let's look at it this way. We are going to create a row first. So let's create a row. So the most important thing you need to understand here is every row must be created or is created with the every row is created with the TR elements. So if I say TR here, it means I have created a row like this. So we understand rows and columns on tables. So once I add this element to the web or my document, it means I have created a row, and now I can decide if I want to have headings or body contents in this row. So it doesn't matter which one comes first. It depends on how you want your table to be displayed. So here I want to have a TH. Now you could start with a TD, but it depends on how the table structure is. So let's look at this. Let's start with the TH. This means that on this first row, this TH is the first column. So I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going to call it column 1. Or we start with row 1, column 1. So this would help us understand. And if I save this now, what we have is a row and a column. Now, like I said, the THR and the TH specifies if the cell, the TH specifies if the cell is a heading or a body. So we can have two rows, two cells on this row. So the TR, remember, is the row, and the first cell is the TH we created here. So let's add another column on this same row. So we can have as much columns we want on a particular row, just like the way we have tables on our Word document. So if I say I want to have another TH here, it means I want to have another row. So this will also be still row 1, but this time we have the second column, which is column 2. So I'll save this and refresh the page, and we see that we are still on the same row, but we have two columns as specified inside the TR element, which is the row. So we can have another row, and when we add another TR element, it means that we've added another row to this table. So without the cells, we're not going to see it. So let's add a cell to this second row. Now, on this second row, we are going to have body. So let's use a TD, and this will be for the second row. So we'll call this row 2, and this is now the cell. Because it's a TD, let's just call this cell cell 1. So we're still under the same first column. So I'm going to save this. So I'm going to save this. So we'll see what we've created. Now you can see. I'm going to copy this and add it below the table. All right. So now we can see that we have, according to the row and the column we have added. So we added the first row, which gave us the first line we have here, and we had two cells or columns because I just called it columns, so we can have different cell below them. So remember, we can have the TH anywhere than what you're trying to create. So here we have the heading first, trying to make it as simple as possible. So we have the heading. For the second row, we have a cell like the body, which is the TD element. And we can as well, if we add the second cell to this, it's going to now complete this table as 2 row and 4 cells. So let's do this. So we say TD, and this still is on row 2, but it's the cell 2. So I'll save this. Refresh. Now you can see how it's displayed. So we have it's displayed like this. All right, so now all right, so let's create everything first before we look at other ways to how to use the row span and col span. So I'm going to add another row, or we can have up to let's have up to 4 cells on this row. So we'll see how it displays. So we're just exploring now. So we'll call this cell 3 and cell 4. but still on the second row. So you can see that we have extra 2 cells. So now let's look at how to make this table balance. Let's say we want to increase the span of the heading to cover the rest of the cells we have below. So if we want to make sure that, if we add more TH here, for example, this will give us more balanced table. But now we don't want to have more TH. We just want to have only 2 headings. So this is where the co-span comes in. And the co-span, how the co-span works is when we use the co-span, we are saying that from the span, from the particular column or cell that we give the span from, it's going to take the next column. So if we say we want to, it's going to take this first cell and the second cell. So it's going to shift this one to the front. And if we do for the code to, it's going to take this current cell, which it's currently is, and the next cell. So it always takes the next cells. It doesn't take from the back. So if we say here should have this column 2 should have a co-span of 2, it's not going to take from the back, but from the next cell. So let's look at that here. So we're going to say that we want the first column here to have a co-span of 2. So I'll save this and refresh the page, and you see that the cells below now has been occupied. That's the next cell has been occupied with the heading. But we still have an extra space because we only occupied 2 cells and we have 2 headings. So one heading is occupying 2 cells and the second heading is occupying just 1 cell. So let's make it balance by making sure that the second column has a co-span of 2 as well. So I'm going to save this, refresh the page, and then we have the first 2 columns spanning the amounts of columns or cells that we've specified. So this is the basic way of creating the rows. Let's look at how to create a row. And if I save this, it means we're just going to have the 3rd row, but let's correct the contents. So this would be row 3. So this is correct. Now we have row 1, row 2, row 3, and we have more cells. Now, what if we want to combine this row 2, cell 1 with this row 3, cell 1? Now, remember, we have them in individual rows. We have the first one in the first row, which is the heading, or it could be anything, but always take notes of the rows, that they are always in rows. So now we want to look at how to make sure that the first cell of row 2 takes 2 rows, not just 2 columns like we have here, but we want this first cell of row 2 to take 2 rows. Now we are going to specify that in the open tag of the first cell, and we're going to say we want a row span of 2. Now there are only 2 cells here. So remember, once you include a row span or co-span, it takes the next cell. Like for the col, it takes the next cell on the same column. or the next column, sorry, but for the row span, it takes the next row. It combines the next row cell. So now if we say 2, it means it's going to take the next cell we have here. But if we do this, because we already have a cell, it's going to give us an error. So it doesn't take it as the way, it doesn't take the cell the way we expected. Now, in order for us to correct this, we have to make sure that it doesn't have an extra cell. So we take out that particular cell that we want to merge with. So on the third row is where I took out the cell. You can see here that I have specified that this should take 2 rows. So it means on this row, we already have 4 cells. But on this third row, we can't have 4 cells because we specified that this cell is going to take 2 rows or 2 cells in a row span. So I'm going to save this and refresh the page, and then we see it's displaying properly now. So basically, this is just how the rows and the row span and col span works. So our time is already close. So let's look at how to add icons using Font Awesome to the web page. So I'm just going to quickly try this. I'll go to Font Awesome. Now, when you come to Font Awesome, you'll be required to create an account in order for you to properly use All right, so when you come to Font Awesome, you will be required to create an account. And once you have your account, you sign in, just like I have here. I'm currently signed in. So there are several ways you can add Font Awesome to your documents. Now, when you come here, you could decide to download the Font Awesome resources and save it up just like the class lesson illustrated. But the easiest way for me, and which is also a nice way to reduce the workload, but because most times you have to look at the security aspect of it, or when you are adding a CDN to your development. So I trust Font Awesome. Now I want to add Font Awesome CDN instead of downloading the resources directly to my development or my project directory. So I am going to select this your kit, and I'll come to set up icons in a project with 1 line code, and I'll click this, and here you'll see the script which you need to copy to paste on as an embedded code on your document. So remember how we use we call this style sheet the embedded style sheet because it's in the head area. So we are going to have a script here, and also recall while in the lesson week 1 lesson, we looked at the different elements we have on the head area, and we also talked about the script tag. So the CDN here, we use the script tag to add this library, the Font Awesome library, to our document. So I'm going to paste this as copied from the Font Awesome website. So, and I'm going to save this. So this means that I will be able to use Font Awesome icons, or the libraries, whatever icon I want from the libraries on my documents. So let's go to the documents let's go to icons. So I'll go to icons. So there are several icons you want to, and if you're using a pro account, you subscribe to the website, you can use the pro icons. But this is a free account, so I'm going to select free, all the free icons, and once it's loaded, I can select or search from the icons we have here. So let's say I want to make use of this icon. I want to add this to my web page. So now there are several styles you can apply, but remember what's one thing here is that I have HTML selected here, not React, not Vue or SVG. So it depends on the language you're using or the the type of development you're trying to develop. Now, what I have here is just, I want to add this as an HTML icon to my HTML document. So I leave it at HTML. And this is the icon syntax you need to copy to add to your document. But you can also add more style to the icon. So let's say here you can select the background of the display if you want it to display differently. But what makes this unique now is when we start adding style to this icon. So let's say we want to add a color. I want the color to be yellow, or you could pick the color you want. Let's say we want a green color. So depending on the type of web page you're creating and what it requires. So I want to pick something of this color, and I could as well use the picker to choose from any other color I have on the page. Let's say I have it's a unique color I have on another page, and I want to make sure it's that color I want. So I could select that color as well, and it's going to display the color here, right here. So, but what I want is for the green color. So, no, not this green. Okay, so next you can decide to add some more details. You want the size, you want to change if it's flippable, if it makes any difference when you flip it, you can flip it as well. So I'm going to leave this as the default. And then we can as well add an animation. So it depends on the icon. We can't add animation to this icon. So let's look at an icon. We can add an animation. So let's say this check icon. I want the color I want to select a green color. And I want to animate the check to display like as an animation. So let's choose one of these animation. I want this. So there are several styles you can add to your icon. And when you're done, all you have to do is click on this space, but make sure you're on the HTML section. So I click on this space and I have successfully copied it. And back to our page, let's say we want to add this icon to any of the cell. So let's add it to our row 2. So I'm going to paste what I've copied here. I'm going to save it and refresh the page. And there I have the icon. So remember, you can adjust the size as well, the size of the icon. Although there are several ways you can do this on your HTML or your CSS to style the icon, but the Font Awesome tries to make it easier for you when you are trying to select an icon. So this is how you add Font Awesome to your documents or your web page. Now you can add Font Awesome to a heading. You can add it to any other elements, not just only tables. All right. This is where we're going to end class today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask now before we round up. So if you have any challenges, you can always reach out to me from the WhatsApp group or any of the admin on the WhatsApp group. So have a lovely weekend ahead. I wish you all success in your assignment.